Yo, welcome back to the GrownKID Talk Show. This is one of my most long-awaited, dare I say, anticipated videos. Can Ghost of Tsushima win Game of the Year 2020? Now, I'm not 100% sure if the Game Awards are going to actually happen, as I was trying to look for information and I couldn't find any. But before we get into today's video, I did beat Hellblade: Senua's Sacrifice, and I loved it. One thing I'll be interested to see is if any of the reviewers or people talk about astigmatism being one of the driving factors in the design of the game, as well as obvious the mental health issues of Senua. I cannot wait. Ever since I saw the reveal trailer for the second installment into the saga, I just had to go and play it. But back to Ghost of Tsushima. I did a rather popular video on Ghost of Tsushima versus Cyberpunk 2077, as I believe that those are the two games that have the best chance and rightfully should win Game of the Year. However, looking into the reviews for Ghost of Tsushima, I did find a mixed bag, honestly, and I was surprised at some of the criticism, or should I say overly critical thoughts and ideas from some of the writers and reviewers that we cover here on the channel. So this is also in part a review, because I feel like the review aspect of the videos, yes, while they take a little bit longer, definitely give us the whole picture of the game. Obviously, I also played it, I loved it, I platted it. This will be an honest discussion. Can Ghost of Tsushima win Game of the Year?
Yo, it's the GrownKID Talk Show. Yo, it's the GrownKID Talk Show. Yo, GrownKID Talk Show. Yo, it's the GrownKID Talk Show.
So first up, as always, will be IGN Ghost of Tsushima review. This is the Way of the Samurai by Michel Saltzman. And yes, if you are familiar with IGN and my channel, we have seen Michel Saltzman a few times. Ever since Assassin's Creed started leaping from ancient Jerusalem to Renaissance Italy to colonial America and beyond, there has been a long-standing itch to see the open world stealth action series take on feudal Japan. They always should have done this kind of genre in Assassin's Creed. Never knew why they never fully committed to that idea. It really shows the lack of attention Ubisoft has paid to its fans, because this is something we wanted. We damn sure don't want a Viking Assassin's Creed game. So Michel here makes a very good point. Going into the article, I always pick out a few segments that some of the other reviewers won't be talking about, or some that I find very interesting and or noteworthy for you to pay attention to. Kotal Kahn is one of the most memorable game villains in recent memory. Kotal Kahn does maintain a level of mystique. I think that mystique is what held him up for me as the player, being such a great enemy villain. This article right here talks about the combat, and the little touches go a long way towards combat's exquisite feel. Combat in this game feels really good. There are tons of tools to your disposal, and in those tools you definitely get that feeling of an Assassin's Creed game. I want you to always keep that in the back of your mind, because we will get to some other reviews that will mention that aspect being a negative in this game. There are two major flaws, in my opinion, that Ghost of Tsushima has, and this is definitely one of them. The problem is what happens when you get spotted. Enemies just don't know how to handle it. What if I climb onto a rooftop? They don't follow you. They don't hunt you. They kind of just yell and throw shurikens. The AI in this game isn't incredibly competent, and I do feel that in the next generation, AI will definitely see a severe bump up in its intelligence, because that played into the game's difficulty. I played the game initially on its hardest difficulty upon release, and then they updated the game to release another difficulty, and thankfully I didn't beat it before then. So then I upped my difficulty again, and I still felt that the game was probably too easy. Enemies were a little bit lackluster when it comes to your regular mobs. Open world games can often feature some of the most beautiful virtual landscapes there are, and Ghost of Tsushima is right up there with the best of them. It may not quite meet the promise of its 2018 gameplay reveal trailer, but this is still a stunningly gorgeous game. Now, unfortunately, I have to disagree with Mitchell here. I feel like he just needs something negative to say for negative's sake. It's kind of really dumb, actually. The game is absolutely beautiful. The world is absolutely beautiful. Everything is actually quite beautiful. To say that it doesn't live up to a trailer is just kind of dumb to me, honestly, because I cannot recall the last time I read a review and they went as so far as to knock a game to talk about the fucking reveal trailer. So this is what I was talking about with that over criticism. That is just just stupid. But obviously that criticism could not hold this game down. It got a 9 out of 10, editor's choice, amazing. Ghost of Tsushima is an excellent action game, and its open world is one of the most gorgeous yet. 100% true, and I do think a 9 is pretty spot on for this game. I actually can say that this was a decent review from IGN. I normally don't say that at all. This was fair, even if when you get to the nitty-gritty details of the review, Michelle was just nitpicking at some dumb shit. I always liked the site and format of Games Radar because they actually put time and effort into the titles with the picture and all that. Ghost of Tsushima review, a worthy swan song for the PS4 by Rachel Weber. Games Radar's pros and cons list is probably one of the best out there for little blurb summaries. The only con for this game being a bleak and bare start to the third act. I want to tackle this up front. That bleak and bare start to the third act is 100% intentional, and I believe adds so much value to the story that made it even that more memorable. Because the writer, director, or artist knows that they have something great, they don't tend to change it up enough for you to care. I believe that the change in the game for this third act was so necessary, and while it doesn't feel as like fun, you're gonna hear people say, or as open, or as colorful and beautiful, I believe for the story's sake, it needed to happen. The pros being, Tsushima is a work of art, sumptuous stories with soul, combat keeps you on your samurai toes right until the end, and foxes. The real star of Ghost of Tsushima isn't its hero Jin Sakai, it's the island that unfurls around you. Sucker Punch has delivered on its promise of using the natural world as a guide, with the wind's direction leading you to waypoints, golden birds showing the way to hidden secrets like bamboo strikes and hot springs, and foxes shepherding you to Inari shines. I'm going to have to 100% disagree that the star of Ghost of Tsushima isn't Jin Sakai. The world is beautiful, but that world means nothing if you can't identify with a main character in that world. So Jin Sakai is an amazing main character. I really think people need to define something wrong with the game in order to act like they're actually providing criticism. And then Games Radar goes on to list its complaint. The only complaint, which is just highlighted by the richness of the world elsewhere, is that occasionally you'll find an area that feels like there should be more there, an empty village or Mongol camp where the story will almost certainly take you later. You can still search for supplies and secrets in the empty building, but it feels like wandering onto an empty stage. In the third act, no spoilers, you're suddenly in an area that feels bleak compared to the riots of color and activity in the first and second act, and it's like being plunged into a cold bath. Yes, it marks a twist in the tale, but it's just not as much fun. I want people to understand that the word fun does not mean good. Everything doesn't need to be fun in order for it to be effective and great storytelling. I don't like that kind of criticism because I feel like it's very shallow just to call something not fun. Again, when it's all just beautiful colors and roses, what kind of experience did you actually take from it? I would argue that the bleakness of this made you love this game. And then yet, despite that third act not being fun, so let me remind you that's 1/3 of the game still got a 4.5 from Games Radar. Ghost of Tsushima is the Samurai Assassin's Creed Ubisoft will wish it had made. I would agree with that statement if I thought Ubisoft had a soul and cared about its fans, so I don't. Yes, Ghost of Tsushima is very much like an Assassin's Creed we wish we had. The game still does definitely deserve this 4.5, but for reasons probably not mentioned in this review. Now here's where things start to take a turn to the confused side. Metacritic gives us an 83 for the Metascore, which is the critically acclaimed critics, and a 9.2 for the users. That is a huge discrepancy, so let's see some of these reviews, and I will say off the bat, these are fucking dumb. Trusted Reviews gave the game an 80. Ghost of Tsushima is an excellent open world adventure from Sucker Punch Productions, which adds some innovative ideas to a fairly stagnant genre. The game's depiction of the time period is generic and inoffensive, but that doesn't prevent it from being a stunning visual showcase and a worthwhile swan song for the PS4. Let me clarify one thing. Swan song kind of means the last hurrah, the last send-off of the generation. I will have to disagree there because I do not believe that Ghost of Tsushima will be that last swan song for the PlayStation 4. I do think it'll be Cyberpunk 2077. To say that the game's time period is generic and inoffensive is crazy. The game does such a good job of actually, for a few times, me considering that the Mongols might have a point here. That was one of the beautiful things about Ghost of Tsushima. It is definitely not something that everyone's going to pick up on, and I'm not saying that it's overtly in your face. I'm saying that you will get that feeling once or twice, maybe even 3 times throughout the game. So this trust your reviews, don't trust them. And then to give the game an 80 still to me is probably a little bit under what it's fairly should be given. So again, don't trust trusted reviews. Speaking of don't trust the trolls. Hermokel gave it a 4 out of 10, 9.2 user score. For real? I feel incredibly shocked by gaming culture these days. The Last of Us 2, which set a new bar for storytelling in video games, was review bombed, and this repetitive game that does everything the exact same way and 100% caters to a non-inventive open world trend with full of open world cliches and lackluster level design gets a 9.2. This could easily be an Assassin's Creed game. I'm going to break Hermokel, or whatever the fuck this guy's name, little blurb, in half. Number one, this could never be an Assassin's Creed game because, like I've said before, Ubisoft doesn't give a fuck about the fans. Number two, The Last of Us 2 is a shit game. That new bar that it sets in storytelling was a bad bar. Therefore, that's why the game got such bad reviews by real people. You want to take into account critic scores for The Last of Us Part 2, and unfortunately, I'm gonna have to bring up The Last of Us Part 2 at the end of this video when we talk about can it win, because TLU got a crazy amount of perfect scores, which everybody and their mother with half a brain knows that that game is far from perfect. Number 3, the idea that Hermokel is gonna call it repetitive just tells me that you don't really like open world games. Did they not notice the way that the standoff mechanic worked? Beautiful. Did they not know that this game was hitting on all of those old Japanese, Chinese styled action samurai movies from like the 1930s, which was just a beautiful ode to that genre, because that genre has died off entirely in the modern era. We don't get those movies like that anymore, and this game was actually a swan song for that genre and style of artistic expression. Fuck Hermokel, trash review, a 4 out of 10. We all know that it's not a 4 out of 10, but you can make the case, and I can make the case, that The Last of Us Part 2 is a 4 out of 10. Carr gave the game a 9 out of 10. While not perfect, I would give it like an 8.7 out of 10. I was enjoying the gameplay and story throughout the 20 to 30 hours. What doesn't make it a 10 out of 10 is the sheer ridiculousness amount of collectibles. So because there's a lot of collectibles in the game, you don't want to give it a 10 out of 10. That might be the dumbest reason I've ever heard not to give a game a 10 out of 10. And let me preface this by saying Assassin's Creed's collectibles are entirely worsely done than this game. This game achieves collecting collectibles actually fun and engaging and beautiful. Assassin's Creed's collectibles are trash, but a 9 out of 10, is that a fair score for the game? Probably. But when people have to explain it, I noticed that in this Ghost of Tsushima review, people have a hard time doing so. So as of late, Kotaku and Polygon, well, first, you would be remiss to not read these two just because they don't give a lettered or numbered grade, but lately Kotaku and Polygon have, I felt, been more honest in their critiques, giving games very fair reviews. However, when it comes to Ghost of Tsushima, we're going to find a different side of Kotaku and Polygon that is in every other major publication, but I was very surprised to what I found by Ian Walker, and yes, we've heard Ian Walker before on this channel, and if you are an avid reader of Kotaku, so let's get into this review. By nature of them not giving review scores, we definitely look more into depth at what they say. Jin is a blank slate in the early hours of Ghost of Tsushima, with only brief flashbacks to his time learning from his uncle as any indication of who he is under this gruff exterior. Now, I don't necessarily think that Jin is a blank slate in this RPG and that we are filling in the pieces as the story go. I think Jin is actually a very well-built character, and we only watch his world crumble. We don't exactly build him up, we tear Jin down. Ghost of Tsushima has an almost insatiable desire to remind you of its influences through its visuals. Each mission opens with a title card that draws inspiration from old samurai films, which is beautifully done. You will want to see the next fucking title of a mission. An optional black and white visual filter is literally named after legend director Akira Kurosawa, but imparts the game with none of the charm or humanity from which his films are known. Now, I disagree with that entirely because I will take a shot in the dark and assume that Ian did not play the whole game in this visual filter. So to comment on it without actually playing the whole game or half of the game or one whole section of the game in this filter, I feel is just a disservice, and this person, Ian, writing out of his ass. But again, that is me assuming, and you know what happens when you assume, but I am willing to bet that they did not play the game enough to make this kind of comment on that black and white filter. Every attempt at infusing Tsushima with these cribbed details feels like a wink and a nudge for recognition rather than a true homage. The fact that he's saying that Ghost of Tsushima isn't a true homage to Akira Kurosawa's, works and the black and white films, that samurai era type of feel, is just an overstatement for criticism's sake. This is honestly kind of disappointing from Kotaku, as I found lately that they have been so on point with their criticism. This just seemed like Ian is reaching for straws. It is a true homage to that, and it's so beautiful. If anything, the game tried so hard to be a true homage. You should give it credit for that. And not living up to that expectation of a Akira Kurosawa film, just falling slightly short, is still a massive accomplishment, and Ian somehow thinks that it's not. The most important thing I wanted to share with you all is that the game is over 55 hours, 100% worth your money, 100% of the time. Jin isn't sympathetic or interesting enough to care about. Any growth he shows over the course of the game deals entirely with his approach to warfare, rather than the imbalances within the society he seeks to protect, or even his own responsibility for maintaining them. Whoa, you pretentious little prick, Ian, as if you know anything about honor to make this kind of statement. Jin is sympathetic. You want to know why? Because Jin doesn't want to disappoint the only person in his goddamn life that matters, his uncle or surrogate father. And forget the fact that the whole of Tsushima matters to him. Why? Because he has honor. That honor was clearly wasted on Ian in this article. Jin does very little personal inventory about how he might have contributed to the turncoat's view of the world, instead focusing on a quest for revenge that could have been entirely prevented with a little bit of compassion. This statement is so incorrect, it's laughable. This could not have been prevented at all. How is compassion gonna save you from the Mongol Empire, Mr. Ian? You beta male? You would probably die by Kotal. I'm totally convinced Kotal would kill you. Does very little personal inventory. It is insane that you could write such a contrived sentence. I don't want you to be misled by the idea that Jin is a flat character, because he's not in any way. This game does not work without a character like Jin. Ghost of Tsushima is pretty as heck. Sporadic capturing left me with almost 50 GB worth of screenshots and a short video clips to shift through, but at its core, it's just another open world game. Again, I said this before, you might not just be a fan of open world games. You should just come out and say that at the start of your review instead of bashing the game for what genre it's in. I found myself audibly sighing every time I crested a hill toward a mystery objective, only to find another fox or follow, another haiku to compose. That is just the epitome of what's wrong with gamers these days. Ian feels entitled that he doesn't need to work for anything, and if the game has too much for him to do, he gets all crazy like, I don't know what to do. I can go here, I can go here, I can go here. Well, guess what? You don't have to do anything like that. It's an open world game. Your hand isn't held. You can skip all of that. But no, your weakness is going to tell you to go do all of that, but you don't like it, so why would you do it? I myself found all of that beautiful. These diversions, just diversions, not central to the plot, not engaging, not fun, they're diversions. While unique at first glance, proved to be just busy work as time wore on. This is an incorrect statement. Again, Ian is just pulling for straws, trying to stay relevant because he wrote a shitty review. You're not going to convince me that it's busy work in an open world game. That kind of comparison is so shallow, it's ridiculous. I was so strong by the end of the game, filling up every skill tree is easy if you ignore the main story and just explore for a bit, that I didn't even bother using stealth tactics for the last third. Let me put it this way. So you rag on the fact that there were so many diversions, but then you go and did all of those diversions to fully max out your character, Ian? Are you fucking serious? And then you're going to complain about being strong at the end of the fucking game? I don't think I even died for the first few hours. That's a bullshit fucking lie. There's no way he didn't die in the first few hours, because that is when the game is arguably the hardest, when you don't know everything and you don't know what to do. I call bullshit on that. And if that's not bullshit, and you died in that third act when you were super strong, then you're a shitty gamer, Ian. There's so little to get excited about in Tsushima once the initial wonder of the wind physics and lush environments wears off, that the only thing that kept me going was my own innate desire to fill out the entire map. Well, it seems like you have a personal problem in your fucking brain, Ian, if that is your only desire, and that you get all OCD about it. That's an OCD symptom of yours, not us other gamers. And that can only hold someone's interest for so long. And to think I was really thinking that Kotaku and Polygon were really like reviewers on the side of gamers, reviewing games in a real way that was tangible and with facts and based, and take out all of this other emotion and bullshit. This review, I would say, don't read, only because it's trash. But here on this channel, we have to give this review a grade. While I believe that Ian did enjoy the game, because he kind of gave it away that he did fucking everything in the game, I believe he's going to fall at either a 7.5 or an 8.5, and I normally cut that in half, but in this case, I really want to show my fairness that I try to do in every video. Normally, I'd say the reviewer is trying to be fair at the very least, but I don't believe that Ian was trying to do that, so Kotaku has given Ghost of Tsushima a 75 out of 100. That's fucking shocking. Our final reviewer is Polygon, Ghost of Tsushima review. You've played this before. A great setting let down by rote design. By Carolyn Pett. We've heard Carolyn Pett before, and rather recently. I'm interested to see what they're going to say. Morally ambiguous heroes are commonplace, of course, but the particular weight of honor and tradition Jin bears allows Ghost of Tsushima to navigate this well-trodden territory in a way that feels distinctive and appropriate to the game's setting. I have to slightly question the idea that it's well-trodden territory, is that everybody seems to say that the samurai genre is such well-trodden territory. I feel like in a sense it is. However, how many times in that territory is it considered a joke by the masses? Even the directors, spoof films on that. How many times has this well-trodden territory been done justice and done correct, especially in the modern era? They are few and far between, so I feel like that kind of criticism is just not as potent as I think some of the writers think it is. This brings up my second problem with Ghost of Tsushima as well. I wish the developers had taken that extra step and modeled the characters against the Japanese voiceover. Let people who opt for the English dialogue deal with the lip movements being out of sync. After all, it would only contribute to the feeling that you're watching a Japanese film dubbed into English. They're talking about this syncing issue here with the lips, and to me it was very noticeable because it was reversed. Normally you would think that the syncing would be off on the lips in the English. Instead it was synced opposite, where it was off in the Japanese dialogue. I get what they're saying here, and I 100% agree with this criticism. The lip syncing was rather bad in this game, but I don't think they expected more people to play the game in Japanese than they did English. But with the current trend in gaming, like I've been saying before, especially with Sekiro being one of the more noticeable titles to do that in and play it in the original language of the country, which I am all about that movement. I also wish we'd get games from Africa in an African tongue, or a German game in a German tongue. I really want more of that, and I'm happy to see that this is finally becoming more and more of a prevalent conversation. Ghost of Tsushima's was bad, there's no denying it. Look, I'm a simple woman. If a golden bird wants to lead me somewhere, I want to follow. If there's a question mark on my map, I want to find out what it is. But with those aforementioned birds who chirp at you all the time, with its genuinely overwhelming number of artifacts, written records, crickets, banners, saddles, sword kits, headbands, masks, charms, and other items to collect, Ghost of Tsushima is overeager, desperate even, to constantly make me feel rewarded or to show me that I'm making meaningful progress. This eats away at my ability to see the world of the game as the world, rather than a collection of things to do and grab and earn. This is an over-criticism, even if the game wants to reward you in giving you what basically amounts to cosmetics. Let me mind you that most of these things that you collect in it are cosmetics to make your character how you want to make it. Not all of them are essential to the plot, though some are in terms of getting that extra backstory. To say that you felt overwhelmed and that the game was trying to push it too hard on you is more of a critique on open world games than Ghost of Tsushima itself. So I find that this criticism could be used in so many other games that it falls flat to me, because you're not saying anything about Ghost of Tsushima besides lying about the fact that it took away from the beauty of the world. That's just an outright lie and really pathetic. Just because you felt overwhelmed, that does not mean all of us gamers feel overwhelmed. Again, I bring back the whole OCD gamer thing. Keep your OCD to yourself. That has nothing to do with the actual game's review. That is your personal feeling. That is not an objective critique. It's a shame that Ghost of Tsushima doesn't put more trust in its setting, because the real reward for exploring Tsushima could have been just taking in all of the picturesque beauty, a tranquil pond overseen by a statue of Buddha, a dueling circle in which leaves gently fall, red as blood, a grassy field, its gentleness offset by a single arrow-riddled corpse. The game clearly doesn't trust its player base to go look for beautiful things, so the complaint is that the game has too many things in it, and conversely, if they didn't do that, they would just complain that there wasn't enough in it. It makes no damn sense. And in summation, Ghost of Tsushima has a distinctive aesthetic after all, but it's only skin deep. The core game underneath that alluring exterior is a patache of open world game design standards from 5 years ago. It lacks a real personality of its own. Ghost of Tsushima offers a lovely world to explore, and there's value in that, but it should have been so much more than a checklist of activities to accomplish. I 100% disagree. It was not just a checklist of things to accomplish. That's your OCD. It is not skin deep. The fact that you could not identify with Jin and you thought that character was a little bit flat, you don't understand honor clearly, just like our previous reviewer from Kotaku. I'm very disappointed in Polygon and Kotaku after all. They seem to over criticize the game for clickbait. And unfortunately, this is just a bunch of trolly shit. I want to think that the reviewer for Polygon would be fair, but by reading the review, I don't think that is possible. So we're going to go with the same exact score we gave Kotaku at a 7.5. It's time for some quick maths, and I just have to say, I'm really disappointed at these clickbait reviews for Ghost of Tsushima, but it just seems that they want to be opposite to whatever IGN, Games Radar does. And again, I wish someone could explain it to me. So here we have all our scores. The 275s are from Kotaku and Polygon. The 90 is from IGN. The other 90 is from Games Radar. That 4.5 out of 5 on a scale of 100 makes it a 90. And that 87.5 you may be confused about is the total Metacritic score. The 83 from the critics and the 92 from the users. We average this all together to equal 417.5. We have 5 reviewers, so we're going to divide by 5. And we get our final score for Ghost of Tsushima review average at 83.5. Now an 83.5 on this channel will also be rounded up to an 84 out of 100. And 84 is an unacceptably low grade for Ghost of Tsushima. It is a much better game than an 84, and I'm a little bit confused as to why the mixed reviews there, especially from Kotaku and Polygon, and that Metacritic critic score of an 83. I thought that 83 was really low, and I usually think that Metacritic is pretty even when you average both of those together, but then when we did our total for all of the review sites, I'm actually quite shocked that the game across the board did not get at least a 90. The game probably deserves anywhere 87 to 92 range. I really do believe it is that good of a game. I think the criticism was over criticism. I think there was a lot of nitpicking. I think there was a lot of OCD gamers complaining about their OCD, acting as if that's something that widespread gamers feel. And now to answer the question, can Ghost of Tsushima win Game of the Year? Unfortunately, I don't think Ghost of Tsushima can win Game of the Year anymore. I had made a video, Ghost of Tsushima vs Cyberpunk 2077 for Game of the Year, and I don't think Ghost of Tsushima is not going to win because of the 84 average review score. There are plenty of high grades out there, but like I've said before, I don't put a lot of stock into the review scores, but a lot of people do. People commented it and said that The Last of Us Part 2 got so many perfect review scores that it has a very high chance of winning. We all know that that shouldn't happen. However, I'm going to say that Ghost of Tsushima is not going to win Game of the Year because Cyberpunk 2077 is going to to win. The main problem with that is if Cyberpunk 2077 gets delayed again, which I have a sneaky suspicion that it is going to, and it's going to miss the cutoff for 2020 Game of the Year, similar to what like a Final Fantasy 15 did. It may be unconcerned with winning that type of award. However, I do think CD Projekt Red needs that kind of recognition, so I don't see why they wouldn't have that game submitted for this year. I think Ghost of Tsushima will lose to that. I don't think TLU 2 is on the table. I am very disappointed and rather confused about the mixed reviews for Ghost of Tsushima. Let me know what you think down in the comments. I know the video was long. I know I rambled, maybe even ranted a little bit. I'm the Grown Kid, and I catch you back in another video.